She carried plates heavier than her dreams and smiled through insults that would break most souls. Emily Dawson, the quiet waitress in the red vest, had spent years learning one truth. Some people wear cruelty like a crown. And that night, her crown was handed by a billionaire named Blake Warren. He mocked her accent, laughed at her hesitation, and tossed money on the table as if kindness could be purchased. Every eye in that restaurant saw power. Emily saw emptiness. She didn't fight back, didn't shout. She simply nodded, hiding the spark behind her calm gaze. What no one realized was that spark would soon ignite the biggest fall the city had ever seen. Because when life decides to balance the scales, it doesn't warn you, it humbles you. Stay with me till the end, and before we begin, hit subscribe and drop your city in the comments, because the next story might disappear before you find it again. And trust me, this one will remind you why humility is the most expensive lesson money can't buy. Blake Warren was a man who believed the universe obeyed his commands. He didn't walk into rooms, he conquered them. He didn't speak, he declared. And that night, in the most expensive restaurant in the city, he was once again on top of the world. His laugh echoed through the marble walls, that confident, chest-deep sound that made everyone else feel smaller, just by hearing it. To him, power wasn't about money anymore. It was about control. Control over people. Control over perception. Control over fate itself. He sat at the center table like a king on a modern throne, surrounded by yes-men and nervous investors desperate for his approval. Every sentence he spoke sounded like a speech, every gesture a performance. "Gentlemen," he said, lifting his glass of imported wine, "you're looking at the man who just closed the biggest tech deal of the decade. While others dream, I build empires." His words cut through the room like a blade, and the group erupted in applause, pretending to share his triumph. Blake loved that sound, not because it was real, but because it kept him from hearing the silence of his own emptiness. When the shy waitress Emily approached with a tray, his tone shifted. He looked her up and down with a smirk that burned. "Careful, sweetheart," he said. "This wine costs more than your car." His friends laughed, and she simply nodded, whispering, "Enjoy your meal, sir." She turned away. But in that short moment, their eyes met. There was no hatred in hers, just a quiet knowing, a calm so steady it almost mocked him. But Blake didn't notice. He was too busy shining under the illusion of power. Then it happened. His phone vibrated once, then again. He ignored it, continuing his speech about market dominance and innovation. But the vibration became insistent, and when he finally looked, the screen wasn't normal. It was blood red, pulsing with digital urgency. In the center, white text glowed, "Account wipe, in 60 seconds." For a second, Blake thought it was a joke. Probably a prank from one of his cybersecurity interns, a twisted sense of humor. He chuckled, showing the phone to the table. "Look at this. Apparently, I'm being hacked." His friends laughed uneasily, but one of them, his CFO, Nathan, went pale. He pulled out his tablet, opened their joint investment dashboard, and froze. "Blake, it's gone." Blake frowned. "What are you talking about?" Nathan turned the screen. Every account read $0 $. The laughter died instantly. The room's energy shifted. Blake tapped his phone again. The same red screen stared back. He tried opening his bank app. It crashed. His crypto wallet, empty. His smartwatch buzzed violently, flashing the same countdown. 45 seconds, 44, 43. "What the hell is this?" Blake muttered, panic creeping into his voice. He pulled out his laptop, connected it to the hotspot. Red text filled the screen like an infection spreading through glass. 42 seconds. 41. The waitress stopped mid-step, staring at the billionaire who suddenly looked less like a king and more like a drowning man. His bodyguards exchanged nervous glances. The investors backed away as if fear were contagious. "Nathan, fix it!" Blake shouted. "Call the IT team! Call the feds! Call someone!" Nathan was already typing furiously. "It's not me. They're in everything. Offshore accounts, property records, servers. It's all being deleted." Blake's hand shook for the first time in years. "Impossible. My security is unbreakable." "Not anymore," Nathan whispered. 35 seconds. Every screen in the room began to flash the same warning. Even the restaurant's smart TVs glowed crimson, reflecting the words that now ruled his world. Data wipe in progress. Guests turned to stare. Phones lifted. Some started recording. The once feared billionaire was now the night's entertainment. Blake's arrogance melted into sheer disbelief. "This isn't real," he said, his voice cracking. "It can't be." "I'm untouchable." But his phone buzzed again, a new message. "Welcome to reality." He grabbed his hair, pacing, muttering, "No, no, no." The crowd whispered, "Is this staged? Is he losing everything?" The shy waitress still stood near the counter, watching quietly, her hands trembling. Not from fear, but empathy. 30 seconds. Blake's heart pounded like a drum in his ears. He tried one last command. "Siri, contact my bank." But the AI responded in a chilling, robotic tone. Connection terminated. A bead of sweat rolled down his temple. His voice dropped into a whisper. "They're taking everything." His smartwatch vibrated. He looked down. Even his private offshore account, the one no one knew about, was empty. He felt exposed, stripped, human. The red countdown glared. 25 seconds. He slammed the phone on the table. "This can't be happening. I own half this city." Someone in the back murmured, "Not anymore." The humiliation was unbearable. People were staring, whispering, recording. For a man who once controlled narratives, his fall was live-streamed karma. Every arrogant joke he'd ever made, every life he'd stepped on, was now watching his empire burn in real time. 20 seconds. He shouted again, "Who's doing this?" But deep down, he knew what it was. A reckoning. Nathan's voice trembled. "Blake, your company servers, the backup drives, they're being formatted too." His fingers went numb. "No backup? Nothing?" "Gone." 15 seconds. He turned, locking eyes with Emily. She wasn't laughing. She wasn't gloating. She looked sad. Then, softly, she said, "May I see your phone?" He blinked, confused. "You?" "Yes," she said quietly. "Let me help." He almost laughed. "You're a waitress. This is a digital heist, not a coffee spill." Her voice didn't rise. "You have 10 seconds left." His pride hesitated, but his fear decided for him. He handed her the phone. Her hands were steady as she studied the code. 10 seconds. Her eyes moved fast, tracing symbols and patterns like she'd seen them before. She whispered, "This isn't a random attack. It's a personal signature. Someone knows your systems. Someone close." Blake's stomach dropped. "How close?" She didn't answer. Her thumb moved across the screen. "I need to isolate the main trigger. Whoever's behind this used a back door in your main server." Her language was simple, but her tone was sharp, confident. 5 seconds. She looked up, meeting his terrified eyes. "If I'm right, I can stop it." 4, 3, 2, he whispered. "Please. 1." And then, nothing. The red screen froze. The timer stopped. The phone went black, then restarted. For a moment, no one breathed. Blake stared as his banking app loaded again. His accounts, all of them, refilled before his eyes. Stocks restored, properties intact, even the offshore account revived. He whispered, "It's back?" Emily nodded slowly. "It's back. But you're not safe yet." Blake swallowed. "Who did this?" She sighed softly. "You'll find out soon." But maybe the real question is, why did they do it? For the first time, his arrogance broke into something unfamiliar. Fear mixed with shame. The same man who mocked a waitress now looked at her like she was the only person who could save him. And in that silence, something shifted. Not in his wealth, but in his soul. His empire had been seconds from erasure. And the only person who stood between him and oblivion was the woman he humiliated. The irony wasn't lost on him. Neither was the lesson. Because life doesn't ask permission before humbling the proud. It just counts down. Blake Warren had built his empire on fear. Fear of failure, fear of being ordinary, fear of not being in control. But at that table, surrounded by frozen faces and glowing red screens, control had left him. His kingdom was collapsing, and he could feel it in his chest. The slow, cold panic of a man realizing his power meant nothing. The countdown glared back at him like a taunt from the universe itself. 15 seconds. For the first time in his life, he wasn't thinking about profits or prestige. He was thinking about survival. His throat was dry. His voice cracked as he shouted, "Somebody help me! I'll pay you anything. Just stop this." The words tasted like rust, the flavor of desperation. The man who once mocked weakness now screamed in it. Nathan, his CFO, was hunched over a laptop, typing furiously. His hands shook. "It's not just your bank accounts, Blake," he cried. "It's a full breach. They've hit your servers, your crypto vaults, even your property records. It's like they're rewriting your existence." The room buzzed with murmurs. Investors whispered. Phones filmed. The staff stood frozen, unsure whether to help or stay invisible. Blake's heart pounded so hard he could hear it over the electronic beeping from every device. He grabbed Nathan by the collar. "Then fix it!" "I can't," Nathan shouted back. "This isn't a normal hack. It's personal. Someone built this attack around you." 14 seconds. Blake's world shrank to that glowing red number. It pulsed with the rhythm of his heartbeat, faster and faster, mocking him. Sweat beaded on his forehead, smudging the perfect polish of a man who thought chaos only happened to others. "No one does this to me," he muttered. "No one." But the timer didn't care about ego. It cared about seconds. 13. Emily, the waitress he'd humiliated minutes ago, was still standing near the counter. She could have walked away. She could have let him drown in his own arrogance. But she didn't. She took a quiet step forward and said gently, "May I see your phone?" Blake turned, his eyes blazing. He almost laughed at the absurdity of it. "You?" he snapped. "Please. This is billionaire-level tech, not coffee machines." His words came out sharp, but fear was breaking through every syllable. His voice wasn't powerful anymore. It was shaky, human. Emily didn't flinch. She simply said, "You have 10 seconds left." The restaurant went silent. Everyone's attention fixed on that simple, calm voice. She wasn't begging. She wasn't boasting. She was just certain. Blake's pride screamed at him to ignore her. His instincts told him to do something, anything else, but his hands wouldn't stop trembling. His empire, his reputation, his entire identity were flashing away with each number. 10 seconds. He looked at the others. Nathan had given up, muttering technical gibberish that no one understood. The investors were already backing away. Some were quietly making calls to lawyers, distancing themselves before the fallout. For the first time, Blake realized what it meant to be truly alone. Emily's voice came again, steady and kind. "You can keep arguing, or you can let me try." It was that word, try, that cut through his panic. No promises, no grand gestures, just quiet courage. He hesitated for one breath. Then, as if surrendering his soul, he handed her the phone. Her fingers moved quickly, her eyes scanning the screen with precision that didn't belong to a waitress. She didn't look nervous. She looked focused. Blake leaned closer, watching as she swiped, typed, and scrolled through code lines that made no sense to him. 9 seconds. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice quivering. "Checking your system logs," she said simply. "Whoever did this knows your network architecture inside out. That means it's not a stranger." He frowned, confused. "You're saying someone I know did this?" She didn't answer. Her brow furrowed as she navigated deeper into his phone. "They bypassed your encryption by using a fake administrator key. That only happens when someone once had access and kept a copy." Her explanation was simple, but it made his blood run cold. Someone close to him wanted him destroyed. 8 seconds. Nathan shouted from behind. "It's no use. The system's going dark. We're locked out." But Emily didn't even look up. "That's what they want you to think," she murmured. "They're not deleting your accounts. They're rerouting your data into a decoy server to make it look wiped." Blake blinked, stunned. "How do you even know that?" "I studied computer engineering before life changed course," she said softly, still typing. "Not all intelligence wears a suit." Her words pierced him harder than any insult could. He'd mocked her minutes ago for being too ordinary. Now, the same woman was holding his future in her hands. 7 seconds. The restaurant had gone completely silent. Even the clinking of glasses had stopped. Everyone's eyes followed her fingers racing across the screen like lightning. Blake's chest heaved. "Please tell me you can fix this." She didn't look up. "Not fix. Reverse." "Reverse?" "Yes," she said. "If I find their entry point, I can turn the breach against them, like shutting a door and locking it from the inside." Blake tried to process it, but his mind was fogged with fear. "Just whatever you're doing, do it fast." 6 seconds. Emily muttered, "They used a looping algorithm. Smart but sloppy. They forgot to mask their return signal." Her tone was calm, her focus unbreakable. Every tap was a countdown to salvation, or destruction. 5 seconds. Blake's knees went weak. His pride had dissolved completely. The billionaire who once bought silence with cash now stood voiceless, praying to a stranger. "Please," he whispered, "please don't let it hit 0. 4 seconds. She whispered, "Almost there." Blake clenched his fists. He could hear the faint ticking of his smartwatch, synced with the same countdown. It sounded like a heartbeat nearing its end. 3 seconds. Nathan shouted, "It's over! It's too late!" Emily's voice sliced through the chaos. "Not yet." 2 seconds. She pressed one final command. "Come on," she murmured. "Come on." 1 second. The screen froze. The red glare flickered once, then vanished. The phone restarted. For a long moment, no one breathed. The investors stared. Nathan stopped typing. Blake's heart nearly stopped. When the device came back on, everything was there. His accounts. His servers. His name. His empire. Restored. Blake stared, speechless. His eyes glistened with the kind of tears he hadn't felt since childhood. Back? Emily nodded faintly, her calm composure unshaken. Yes, you're safe. For now. Blake's voice cracked. How did you even do that? She looked at him with quiet grace. I stopped the leak before the system reached zero. Your backup sync caught the reversal. Whoever tried to ruin you didn't expect someone to fight back in real time. Nathan whispered, almost in awe. She's brilliant. Blake couldn't find words. Just hours ago, he'd been the god of his world. Now, he stood humbled by a woman he'd treated like background noise. His voice was low, sincere for the first time. I owe you everything. Emily smiled softly. You don't owe me anything. Just remember how fast things can disappear when you think you're untouchable. Her words hung in the air like scripture. The billionaire who had insulted her in front of everyone now looked like a man reborn, not richer, not more powerful, but suddenly aware of how fragile his dominance really was. The red timer was gone, but its echo stayed with him. In his mind, it still counted down, not to loss, but to change. Because in that 1 minute of panic, he'd seen what money could never buy. Mercy. And mercy had a name. Emily. So I'll ask you this. Would you trust someone you just insulted to save your life? Comment yes or no. And if you want to see what happens next, how one act of humility turns a billionaire's world upside down, hit subscribe right now. Because the next part will break your expectations in ways you'll never forget. The room felt like a storm trapped in silence. Blake Warren, once the loudest voice in the city, stood frozen, watching the shy waitress move with a calm that didn't belong in chaos. Around him, panic was contagious. Phones buzzed, screens flickered, money vanished, and pride crumbled. But she, Emily Dawson, was steady, quiet, deliberate. Her voice didn't tremble when she said, I can stop it. Blake could barely breathe. The timer on his screen glowed 009, pulsing like a heartbeat, counting down his empire's death. He had spent years building walls of power, but they were paper against this invisible fire. Do something, he shouted. His voice was hoarse, pleading, raw. Please, just whatever you can. Emily didn't answer. She reached into her vest pocket and pulled out a small flash drive, silver, worn, unremarkable. She plugged it into the side of his phone with hands that didn't shake. Your cloud backup is hijacked, she said, her tone almost soothing. Someone mirrored your system using a fake admin key. Think of it like a thief making a copy of your house key while you weren't looking. Blake blinked, his voice breaking. Can you stop it? She nodded slightly. If I can find the main route before the timer ends, yes. I just need to cut their signal. Her fingers moved fast, tapping commands so quickly it looked like a blur. Lines of code scrolled across the screen, symbols and letters Blake didn't understand. What are you doing? He asked, his voice trembling between awe and disbelief. Flipping the circuit, she said simply. If I reverse the access route, your money flows back to you instead of out. Her explanation was simple enough for everyone in the room to follow. But the weight of it felt impossible. A waitress, saving a billionaire from digital annihilation? People whispered, filming, holding their breath. 0007. Her focus never wavered. They're using your company's old root code, she murmured. I can see the pattern. Whoever's behind this had access years ago, before you changed systems. Blake's heart sank. That means someone I know. Emily didn't respond. She was too deep in the work. They left a tracking beacon. That's what's killing your network. I'm shutting it down now. 006. Blake clenched his fists. Tell me when it's done. Not yet, she said, voice low but sure. If I rush it, your files vanish permanently. One wrong command and your money won't just disappear, it'll be unrecoverable. Just breathe. He stared at her, unable to move. This woman he mocked, insulted, dismissed. She was commanding his world with quiet authority. For the first time in his life, he was listening without interrupting. Every keystroke she made felt like a second, stolen back from death. Iruzu 5, she whispered, almost there. Blake couldn't hear anything else. Not the murmurs, not the clicking cameras, not even his own pulse. He only heard her calm voice, measured and deliberate. Your backup is syncing. I'm redirecting the signal into your secondary server. Secondary server? He repeated, trying to keep up. Think of it like a secret tunnel, she said. They're robbing you through the front door. I'm taking everything valuable out the back before they notice. Iruzu 4. Can you really do that? She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that knew more than it said. I already am. Iruzu 3. Blake's throat went dry. His fingers dug into the edge of the table as though holding on could stop time. Emily, please, he whispered, his arrogance gone, replaced by raw, human fear. Don't let me lose everything. Her reply was almost poetic. You won't lose everything, just what you don't deserve. She hit Enter, 02. The red screen froze. The timer stopped mid-beat. For a moment, nothing happened. Everyone stood still, waiting for the crash, the final flicker that would end it all. Blake's mind screamed, it didn't work. It's over. Then the screen flashed. The words changed. Breach reversed. The room gasped. On Blake's banking app, the zeros rolled backward like magic. 0 euro turned into $100,000, $1,000,000, $3,000,000, $200,000. His servers reconnected. His property records reappeared. Every stolen number came home. It was over. Emily stepped back, her breathing steady, as though she hadn't just resurrected billions in under 60 seconds. She unplugged the flash drive, wiped the screen clean with a napkin, and handed him the phone. It's done. Blake stared at it, like a man seeing sunlight after years underground. How did you even? She shrugged lightly. Simple logic. You can't delete what you don't control, so I took control back. Nathan, the CFO, looked at her like she'd just performed a miracle. That was genius. She smiled faintly. No, it was necessary. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was sacred. Every person in that restaurant had witnessed something extraordinary, the collapse and resurrection of a fortune, all because a woman they ignored decided to act. Blake exhaled for what felt like the first time. His voice trembled. You saved me. Emily looked at him, her expression unreadable. No, she said softly. I saved what can be rebuilt. Saving you, that's up to you. Her words hit harder than the loss itself. For the first time, the billionaire's eyes filled with something unfamiliar. Shame mixed with gratitude. He had mocked her, ridiculed her, and treated her like furniture. Yet when everyone else froze, she acted. When his world burned, she stayed. He whispered, Why did you help me? Emily's eyes softened. Because you needed help, even if you didn't deserve it. There was no pride in her tone. No judgment, just quiet compassion. That, more than the hack, shattered him. Blake looked down at the phone in disbelief. The empire he'd nearly lost pulsed with new life. It's all back? Every cent, she said, and more. The system overcorrected. It returned your stolen funds and reversed a few fraudulent transfers. You might actually be richer than before. He blinked. You're joking. She shook her head. No. Life has a funny way of rewarding humility, right after forcing it. The restaurant began to buzz again. People whispered, snapped photos, muttered in disbelief. But Blake didn't care about them anymore. For the first time in his adult life, he didn't feel like a god. He felt small and free. Emily turned to leave, but Blake stopped her. Wait, he said. Please. She paused, looking over her shoulder. He swallowed hard. I was wrong about you. About everything. Her smile was kind, almost sad. Then maybe that's your real reset. Blake's lips parted, but no words came out. All the apologies in the world felt too small for that moment. He just watched her walk away, her red vest bright against the pale marble floor, her presence suddenly larger than anyone in the room. He sank back into his chair, his chest heavy. His empire had survived, but his ego hadn't. And that was the greatest rescue of all. He looked down at his phone again, still seeing her reflection in the glass, her steady hands typing, her calm voice cutting through chaos. The words replayed in his mind. You can't delete what you don't control. Maybe that was life's cruelest lesson. The higher you climb, the more you believe you're untouchable, until someone reminds you that even kings can fall. And sometimes, the person you look down on becomes the one who saves you. So tell me, have you ever underestimated someone only to realize they were your lifeline all along? If this moment hit you the way it hit him, hit the like button right now. For the first time that night, silence felt heavier than noise. The chaos had ended, but tension filled the air like smoke after a fire. Blake Warren stood there, billionaire, survivor, and fool, watching Emily Dawson's calm face as her fingers danced across his phone again. She wasn't done. The attack had stopped, yes, but her eyes told him there was more to uncover. Something darker, something personal. Blake's voice trembled, a fragile echo of the man who once commanded boardrooms. Is it over? Emily didn't look up. For now, she said softly. But whoever did this left something behind. Her tone carried a quiet warning. Hackers are like thieves, she continued, typing faster. Even when they fail, they leave fingerprints. Blake frowned, confused. Fingerprints? You mean you can actually find them? Emily nodded. Every hacker hides behind fake signals. Layers of disguises, fake addresses, fake devices. But this one made a mistake. They forgot to close their return route. It's like sending a letter and forgetting to hide your home address. She pressed a few keys, her focus unwavering. The phone's screen filled with glowing lines, data packets traveling through invisible tunnels, weaving a map of betrayal right in front of them. Blake watched, mesmerized. You can really trace them? I can, she said quietly. And you need to prepare yourself for what we'll find. A chill ran down his spine. What do you mean? Her eyes flicked to him for just a second. Because whoever did this wasn't a stranger. He swallowed hard, dread creeping into his chest. He thought about the people who could hate him enough to do this. There were many. Employees he'd fired, partners he'd betrayed, rivals he'd crushed. But a voice inside whispered a name before the screen did. Emily hit a key. The phone processed for a moment, then stopped on a single line of text. Identified source, Olivia Stone. Executive access. Blake froze, the color drained from his face. No. Emily looked up at him. You know her? He whispered, I don't just know her. I made her. His voice cracked on the last word. For a moment, even Emily's fingers stopped moving. The weight of his confession hung in the air. "Who is she?" she asked gently. Blake sat down slowly, like a man realizing he was sitting in the ruins of his own kingdom. "Olivia Stone," he said bitterly. "My ex-fiancée, my former business partner. She helped me build the company 10 years ago." Emily listened in silence. He continued, his voice trembling between guilt and disbelief. "We were unstoppable back then. She handled development. I handled the investors. We built the first prototype for our security software together. She designed half the system that protects my fortune today." He took a shaky breath. "But when the company took off, I didn't want to share the spotlight. I told the board she wasn't a good fit anymore. I pushed her out, publicly humiliated her. She begged me not to ruin her career. I did it anyway." Emily's expression softened, but her voice was steady. "She knows your system, Blake. She knew exactly where to strike." Blake looked at the phone like it was a mirror reflecting his sins. "I destroyed her," he said quietly. "And now she's destroying me." Emily returned her gaze to the screen. "It makes sense now. The fake admin key? That was her original access pass. She must have kept a backup before you revoked it." He rubbed his temples. "I told the IT department to delete all her credentials." "They deleted her name," Emily said gently, "but not her fingerprint." The truth hit him like thunder. He'd built an empire of walls, but the one person he hurt the most already had the keys to every door. She typed another command, tracing the digital trail further. A map appeared, a glowing path across servers and cloud systems, ending in a blinking red dot. "There," Emily said. "That's her location. She's running the attack from a private network in Manhattan." Blake exhaled shakily. "She's still in the city?" Emily nodded. "Close, and she's watching." Just then, the screen flickered. New text appeared, overlaying Emily's trace program. "Message incoming." Emily froze. "She's sending something." The phone vibrated violently, the light from the screen painting Blake's face in crimson. Then, a new line appeared. Simple, cold, personal. "Next time, I'll erase you instead of your money." Blake's breath caught. His hands shook. It wasn't just a threat. It was a promise. Emily whispered, "She's still in your system. She's taunting you." He sank deeper into his chair. His pulse thundered in his ears. "She wants revenge." "Yes," Emily said softly. "And she knows exactly how to make you feel it." He clenched his jaw. "I took everything from her, her company, her reputation, even her dignity." Emily's eyes lingered on him. "And now she's taking back what she thinks you stole." Blake stared at the floor, his voice barely a whisper. "I deserve this." Emily turned toward him sharply. "No one deserves to be destroyed, Blake. You made mistakes, but this isn't justice. It's pain feeding pain." Her words hit harder than the attack. For the first time, someone wasn't excusing him, flattering him, or fearing him. She was telling him the truth. Blake's face softened. "You really think she'll stop?" Emily sighed. "I think she wants you to feel what she felt. Maybe when you took everything from her, it wasn't just her career. It was her purpose." He swallowed hard. "What do I do now?" She hesitated, then said, "You can go to the authorities, press charges. But if you do that, she'll disappear. She's too smart to get caught twice." He looked up. "And if I don't? Then maybe it's time you face her. Not as a CEO, but as a man who's sorry." Her words echoed like a challenge, and for a moment, he didn't know which frightened him more. The idea of confronting her, or the idea that she might never forgive him. He took a deep breath, staring at the phone screen still glowing with Olivia's name. "You know," he said slowly, "I used to think the worst thing that could happen to me was losing money. But this feels worse." Emily nodded softly. "Because this isn't about what you lost. It's about who you became." He didn't answer. He couldn't. Instead, he looked at Emily, the woman he once mocked, and realized how fragile power truly was. The people he crushed had memories, and sometimes those memories learned how to fight back. His phone buzzed again. A new notification popped up, an image file. Emily opened it carefully. It was a screenshot of an old email from years ago. Olivia Stone, termination notice. Sent from Blake's account. At the bottom was Olivia's reply, never opened until now. 4 words burned into the screen. "You'll regret this someday." Blake stared at it, his chest heavy. She meant it. Emily closed the file quietly. "When you hurt people on your way up," she said, "they remember. Sometimes they wait. Sometimes they build skills. And sometimes they strike when you least expect it." The restaurant around them had emptied, leaving only the sound of the city outside. Blake sat in silence, holding the phone like it was a confession. "I don't even know how to make this right," he whispered. Emily looked at him gently. "Maybe start by admitting you were wrong. Not to the world, just to her." He nodded slowly. "She won't listen." "Maybe she will," Emily said. "Or maybe she won't. But you have to try. Because forgiveness isn't for her. It's for you." Blake's eyes filled with regret. "I never thought I'd say this," he murmured. "But I wish I could go back." "You can't," Emily replied. "But you can go forward differently." The phone buzzed one last time, a quiet vibration that broke the moment. The message on the screen read, "Next time, choose mercy." Blake read it twice, his heart sinking with the weight of truth. He looked up at Emily. "Do you think she means that?" Emily's eyes softened. "Maybe. Or maybe it's what she wanted you to learn all along." He nodded, exhaling slowly. "When I see her again, I'll make it right." And for the first time in years, Blake Warren, the man who once measured worth in dollars, felt the cost of guilt in his own heart. So I'll ask you this. Should he press charges or ask for forgiveness? Tell me in the comments. For the first time in his life, Blake Warren didn't know what to say. The restaurant that had once felt like his private stage was now a cathedral of silence. The laughter, the whispers, the phones, all gone. Only the faint sound of dishes clinking in the back remained, and the echo of his own heartbeat filling the empty air. The man who once bragged about owning the future now sat in a chair, staring at the present, shattered by truth. He looked across the table at Emily, the quiet waitress who had just saved him from losing everything. His phone lay between them, the red screen replaced with calm blue light. The same device that once symbolized control had become a reminder of how fragile he really was. He reached into his jacket, pulled out his checkbook, and slid it toward her. "Name your price," he said softly. "Whatever you want. I owe you everything." Emily looked at him, her expression gentle but unshaken. "You don't owe me anything," she said. "I don't want your money." Blake frowned, genuinely confused. "Then what do you want?" She sighed, her eyes kind but firm. "Just treat people better. The next person might not help you." The words hit him harder than any loss ever had. They weren't dramatic. They weren't cruel. They were simple, and that's what made them powerful. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling deeply. For years, he had believed money fixed everything. That generosity meant giving cash, not compassion. That power came from fear, not respect. But in that moment, as he looked into the eyes of the woman he'd once humiliated, he saw the truth. Money can rebuild a company, but only humility can rebuild a soul. For the first time in years, his voice softened. "Emily," he said quietly, "I'm sorry." She smiled faintly, shaking her head. "Don't apologize to me," she said. "Apologize to them." Blake turned his head. The staff stood at a distance, busboys, cooks, waitresses, watching him with hesitant eyes. They'd seen his arrogance, his insults, his downfall, and now they were watching the aftermath. He stood up slowly. Every eye in the room turned toward him. "Everyone," he said, his voice trembling, "I've been an awful man tonight. I spoke to you like you were beneath me. I acted like my money made me better. But the truth is, without people like you, people like me wouldn't last a day." He reached into his wallet, pulled out a thick stack of bills, and handed it to the nearest waiter. "Double everyone's tips," he said. "Not because you need my money, but because I need to remember what gratitude feels like." There was no applause, no cameras, just quiet shock. And for once, it wasn't performative. It was real. Blake's face wasn't the smug mask the world knew. It was human, raw, and almost broken. As the staff thanked him softly, Emily smiled, a small, knowing smile. "That's a start," she whispered. Hours later, Blake stepped outside into the cold night air. The city lights glimmered like tiny judgments staring down from the sky. He stood there alone, hands in his pockets, replaying every cruel word he'd ever said to people who couldn't fight back. Every arrogant speech. Every moment he'd chosen pride over kindness. He walked to his car, but he didn't start it. Instead, he sat there, scrolling through his phone. Post after post. Selfies with expensive watches, quotes about winners and losers, pictures of lavish parties where laughter was just another performance. He deleted them all, one by one. Each deletion felt like peeling off a layer of armor he no longer needed. He stared at the blank profile that once screamed wealth and now whispered silence. For the first time, he liked it that way. He opened his email next. At the top of his inbox was a name he hadn't seen in years, Olivia Stone. His stomach twisted. The woman who had once loved him, the woman he had betrayed, the same woman who had nearly destroyed him in return. He clicked, compose. His fingers hovered over the keys, trembling. He didn't know what to say, so he wrote what he'd never said before. "Olivia, you were right. I became everything I swore I wouldn't. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know that I see it now. The damage, the pain, the arrogance. I hope one day you heal from what I caused. I'm sorry." He stared at the words, reread them, and pressed send. It wasn't redemption, but it was a beginning. When he looked up again, the city felt different, less like a kingdom, more like a classroom. Life had become his teacher. And the lesson was simple. You can't outrun the people you hurt, but you can learn from the pain they leave behind. Before driving off, Blake opened one last app, the payroll system for his company. He searched for Restaurant Fund and created a new entry, Staff Relief Donation, $250,000. No announcements, no press, just a quiet gift to the people who had served him with dignity, even when he didn't deserve it. He smiled faintly to himself. It wasn't charity. It was responsibility. The next morning, headlines would say, "Billionaire donates after embarrassing hack scandal." The world would assume it was PR. But for Blake, it wasn't about saving his image. It was about saving himself. He sat at his desk later that night, the glow of the monitor reflecting in his tired eyes. His office, once cluttered with trophies and awards, suddenly felt empty. He noticed things he'd never seen before: the framed photos of himself shaking hands with powerful men, the quote on his wall that read, "Winners make no apologies." He stood up and took it down. Maybe for the first time in his life, Blake Warren was tired of winning. He closed his laptop and stared out the window. Down below, people crossed the street: waitresses, cab drivers, janitors, people he'd never noticed before. And for a brief moment, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: connection. He realized Emily had done more than save his money. She'd given him back his humanity. And it hit him like truth often does: quietly, completely, irreversibly. Sometimes, the strongest person in the room isn't the one with the loudest voice or the biggest bank account. It's the one who forgives, who shows kindness when it's undeserved, who teaches through grace instead of punishment. He thought of Emily's words again: the next person might not help you. She was right. Not everyone gets a second chance. And for the first time, Blake understood how lucky he was to have been saved by a stranger who saw a man worth saving, even when he didn't. As the night deepened, Blake whispered to himself, "I'll never forget her." The next morning, he showed up at the restaurant unannounced. No cameras, no entourage, just a man carrying a simple thank you card and a smile that finally looked honest. He asked the manager where Emily was, but she wasn't there. She'd taken the morning off. He left the card behind, tucked beside the register. It read, "You didn't just save my fortune. You saved me." And as he walked out, a sense of peace followed him. A peace that didn't come from wealth, but from humility. Because sometimes, the real victory isn't reclaiming what you lost. It's becoming someone who finally deserves to keep it. So tell me, have you ever had to swallow your pride to make something right? And if this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe, because the next chapter will prove that even redemption has consequences, and not every act of grace goes untested. They say revenge always tastes sweet, until it turns bitter in your mouth. And Olivia Stone was about to learn that truth in full. For days after the breach, Blake Warren couldn't sleep. Even with his money restored, he felt a weight pressing on him heavier than any financial loss. It wasn't fear anymore. It was guilt, the kind that doesn't vanish with passwords or apologies. He spent nights staring at the city skyline, wondering how the woman he once loved had turned into the ghost haunting his empire. But answers have a way of finding those who are ready to face them. And Emily Dawson, the quiet waitress who had become his unlikely savior, wasn't finished yet. While Blake struggled with remorse, she was still digging through code. "She's not done," Emily had said. "Olivia tried once. She'll try again." Her certainty was chilling, but she was right. 3 days later, a series of alerts began flashing across Blake's security servers. This time, Emily was ready. She sat beside him, calm as ever, typing faster than the system could panic. "She's rerouting your funds offshore," Emily explained, her tone firm but clear. "She's using the same backdoor she created before." Blake clenched his fists. "Can we stop her?" Emily's eyes gleamed. "Not just stop her. Catch her." She paused, turning her laptop toward him. "Remember when I said hackers leave fingerprints? She's using the same command chain from the last attack. If I reverse it, the connection will bounce back, like turning a camera on the spy watching you." Blake frowned, confused. "Meaning what?" "Meaning," she said with quiet triumph, "we'll see exactly where she is." Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Streams of symbols and coordinates began to appear, then narrowed into one blinking dot. "Got her," Emily whispered. "She's in Manhattan. Same encrypted network, same location she used before. And she's live right now." The realization hit him like a wave. "She's doing it again," he said under his breath. Emily nodded. "Yes, but this time, she's not invisible." She copied the trace data, called a cybercrime officer she knew from volunteer work, and within hours, the authorities had everything they needed. "Her own code is her trap," Emily told them. "She built it too well to notice it could turn against her." Later that evening, the news broke. Olivia Stone, former tech executive and co-founder of Warren Technologies, arrested for cyber sabotage and attempted embezzlement. The words scrolled across every screen, each headline a painful echo of the legacy Blake had tried to bury. He should have felt victorious. He should have felt safe. But as he sat alone, watching the report, victory tasted hollow. This wasn't a win. It was a reckoning. The next morning, Blake made a decision that surprised everyone, including Emily. "I need to see her," he said quietly. "In person?" Emily hesitated. "Are you sure that's wise?" He nodded. "I owe her more than anger." When he entered the detention facility, the sound of metal doors closing behind him felt symbolic, like his own past locking him in. Olivia was sitting at a small table, her once glamorous poise replaced by exhaustion. Yet, even in handcuffs, she carried the same fire in her eyes, the same brilliance that had once made him fall for her. She looked up when he walked in, her expression unreadable. "So," she said with a bitter smirk, "you finally came to gloat." He shook his head. "No, I came to apologize." The room went still. Olivia's smirk faltered. "You what?" Blake took a slow breath. "I made you bitter," he said. "I took what we built together and made it mine. I humiliated you. I made you believe you were nothing without me. And I was wrong." Her eyes flickered with confusion, then anger. "Don't play saint now, Blake. You ruined me." "I know," he said softly. "And if I could go back, I'd do everything differently. You didn't deserve what I did." Tears welled in her eyes, though her voice remained sharp. "You think saying sorry changes 10 years of pain? You think it fixes waking up every day wishing I'd never met you?" Blake shook his head. "No, but it's a start." Olivia's lip trembled. "Do you know why I hacked you?" she whispered. He looked at her, pain etched across his face. "To get revenge?" She shook her head, a single tear slipping down her cheek. "No, to make you feel." Blake frowned. "Feel what?" "What I felt," she said. "The humiliation, the betrayal, the emptiness of being erased by someone you trusted." The words hit him harder than any accusation could. He wanted to defend himself, to explain his ambition, to say it was just business. But for once, he didn't. He let silence answer instead. Finally, he spoke. "You succeeded," he whispered. "I felt all of it. Every ounce of what I made you feel." Olivia broke down then, not out of victory, but exhaustion. The anger drained from her body like poison leaving the bloodstream. "I didn't want this to end like this," she sobbed. "I just wanted you to see me again." Blake's own eyes filled with tears. "I see you now," he said, "not as an enemy, as the woman who built half of what I am. I can't undo what I did, but I can remember you as more than my mistake." For a long moment, neither spoke. The hum of fluorescent lights filled the silence. Two broken people sat across from each other, connected not by love or hate anymore, but by pain and understanding. When the guards came to escort her out, Blake stood. Olivia, he said quietly. She looked back one last time. I hope one day you find peace. She nodded weakly. Maybe I already did, she said, her voice cracking. Maybe this was it. He watched her disappear down the corridor, her footsteps fading like memories, heavy but final. When he stepped outside, the air felt lighter. For the first time in years, he wasn't running from his past. He had faced it, looked it in the eye, and accepted it for what it was. A scar, not a sentence. Later that night, he sat across from Emily again at the diner where they first met. The irony wasn't lost on him. She's in custody, he said quietly. It's over. Emily nodded. How do you feel? He thought for a long moment. Not good, he admitted. Not bad either. Just human. She smiled faintly. That's progress. He chuckled under his breath. You know, I used to think forgiveness was weakness. And now? She asked. Now I think it's the only kind of strength that lasts. Emily nodded, stirring her coffee. Sometimes peace isn't about justice. It's about letting go. Blake smiled sadly. I think I finally understand that. The diner was quiet. Outside, the city glowed, a heartbeat of lights pulsing in rhythm with the world's noise. But inside, there was peace. For once, the billionaire didn't feel larger than life. He felt small, and somehow, that felt right. He looked at Emily, the waitress who had turned his story from tragedy into transformation. Thank you, he said sincerely. For what? She asked. For reminding me that grace still exists? She smiled. Just remember to pass it on. And he would. Because revenge might bring satisfaction, but forgiveness brings peace. And peace, he realized, is the only form of wealth that can't be stolen, hacked, or destroyed. So, I'll ask you this. Would you forgive someone who nearly destroyed you? If you would, comment "forgive" below, because sometimes the greatest justice isn't punishment, it's transformation. They say time has a way of revealing what pride tries to hide. And for Blake Warren, the man who once treated humility like a foreign language, the weeks that followed felt like a new beginning. Quiet, unfamiliar, and beautifully humbling. The media had moved on. The scandal had faded. But something deeper remained within him. Something that didn't make headlines, but changed his heart forever. He had found peace in small things now. Morning coffee without a meeting, genuine conversations without motives, and silence without the constant hum of ego. He had even started volunteering anonymously at a local mentorship program for underprivileged youth. The man who once believed power was measured by ownership was now learning that it was measured by impact. But there was still one thing unfinished. One person he couldn't stop thinking about. Emily Dawson. The shy waitress who had saved him not once, but twice. The woman who stood calm in chaos, who chose compassion over pride, and who taught him that grace is the highest form of strength. Blake had written her a letter after Olivia's arrest, simple words of gratitude. But he knew it wasn't enough. Gratitude, he realized, isn't just spoken, it's shown. So, one afternoon, he made a decision that would change both their lives forever. 3 weeks later, Emily was finishing a lunch shift at the same restaurant where their paths first crossed when the manager approached her with an envelope. It was sleek, embossed with a silver W. Her heart skipped. She wiped her hands on her apron before opening it. Inside was a single line. Please meet me at the Warren Corporate Tower tomorrow morning. It's important. BW. For a moment, she hesitated. The name alone stirred unease. She remembered the arrogance, the humiliation, the chaos. Yet she also remembered the sincerity in his eyes when he said sorry. People could change. She had seen it herself, and something in her heart told her this meeting wasn't about business. It was about closure. The next morning, she walked into the glass lobby of the Warren Tower. The marble floors gleamed, and the world seemed to move slower inside those walls of privilege. She expected security guards, assistants, or at least a receptionist to usher her in, but instead, standing there by the elevator, waiting with a soft smile, was Blake himself. No guards, no entourage, no arrogance, just a man in a simple gray suit holding a folder under his arm. "Emily," he said, stepping forward, "I'm glad you came." She nodded, her voice cautious. "You didn't say what this was about." He smiled. "Because I wanted to tell you in person." He gestured toward a nearby seating area. She followed, her nerves calm but alert. He sat across from her, not behind a desk or a symbol of authority, but at eye level. For the first time, they looked like equals. "I've been searching for the right person," he began slowly. "To lead something new. A position that requires integrity, courage, and brilliance under pressure." Emily blinked, unsure if she was supposed to respond. "Why are you telling me this?" He handed her the folder. It was sleek, black, and marked with gold lettering. "Chief Cybersecurity Manager. Confidential appointment." She looked at him, puzzled. "I don't understand." Blake leaned back slightly, his smile calm but proud. "You protected my company better than my entire IT department. You stopped a multi-billion-dollar collapse with a flash drive and steady hands. You did what a room full of experts couldn't." Emily shook her head, almost laughing in disbelief. "I'm just a waitress." "Not anymore," he said softly. "You're the best mind I've ever met. And it's time the world saw that too." Her hands trembled as she opened the folder. Inside was an official offer letter. "Chief Cybersecurity Manager, Warren Technologies. Annual salary, $250,000. Full benefits, private office, flexible schedule." Her breath caught. This has to be a mistake." "It's not," Blake said. "You earned it." She stared at the letter, her eyes misting. "I don't even have a degree," she whispered. He smiled warmly. "Neither did I when I started. I had something better, a mind that didn't quit. So do you." For the first time, Emily couldn't find words. Gratitude, disbelief, pride, all collided in her chest at once. "Why are you doing this for me?" she asked softly. Blake's voice was calm, but it carried weight. "Because when I was falling, you didn't ask what I was worth. You just helped. You treated me like a person when I didn't deserve it. And now it's my turn to do the same." Her tears finally broke. She covered her mouth, laughing through them. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," he said. "But there's one condition." Her brows furrowed. "What condition?" He smiled. "You have to promise you'll never see yourself as just anything again. Not just a waitress. Not just someone helping others. Because people like you're the backbone of the world." That broke her. Not in pain, but in release. Years of quiet struggle, of feeling unseen, of being underestimated, all met that one moment of recognition. She nodded through tears. "I promise." He stood and extended his hand. "Welcome to the team, Miss Dawson." She took it, her grip firm but shaking. "Thank you," she whispered. Blake smiled, but his tone softened into something almost philosophical. "You know, Emily, life has a strange way of circling back. I spent years building walls to keep people out. And then, the one person I tried to look down on lifted me up." She smiled faintly. "Sometimes, people just need someone to remind them they're still human." He nodded. "And sometimes, the people we overlook, are the ones we were meant to lift. The moment hung there, quiet, pure, redemptive. Weeks passed, and Emily's first day in her new office felt surreal. She wasn't surrounded by customers or chaos anymore, but by respect. Her nameplate gleamed on the door, and every email began with Manager Dawson. The shy waitress in the red vest had become the woman leading an entire division. But she didn't forget where she came from. She returned to the restaurant often, not for nostalgia, but to leave something behind each time. Scholarships for staff kids, donations to workers, anonymous thank you cards tucked under receipts. She had been lifted up, and now she was doing the same for others. As for Blake, he kept his promise to live differently. He attended staff meetings without titles, shook hands without pretense, and even added a new quote to the wall of his office, the one that replaced "Winners make no apologies." It read, "Power means nothing if it doesn't lift someone else." One afternoon, Emily stopped by his office to drop off a report. He looked up, smiling. "How's the new life treating you?" She laughed. "Still feels strange. Sometimes I wake up expecting to serve coffee." He grinned. "Well, if you ever miss it, I'll take 2 sugars." They both laughed, a sound that carried no tension, no past bitterness, only peace. Later that evening, as she stood by the tall glass windows of the corporate tower, Emily looked out over the same city that had once ignored her. It looked different now, not because it changed, but because she had. She whispered to herself, "Not just a waitress." And somewhere deep inside, she knew this was more than success. It was justice done gently, a circle completed by grace. Because sometimes the smallest kindness can rewrite the story of giants. Sometimes the person you underestimate becomes the one who changes everything. And sometimes the quietest people leave the loudest mark. They say the loudest stories often end in silence, when the noise fades, when the ego breaks, when the lessons finally sink deep enough to change a soul. For Blake Warren, silence had become his teacher. The man who once filled rooms with arrogance now preferred to listen. The man who once ruled through fear now led through gratitude. Months had passed since the chaos, the hacking, and the heartbreak, and though his empire had recovered, he was no longer chasing profit. He was chasing purpose. The city still saw him as the billionaire who lost everything and somehow got it back. But those who knew him now, those close enough to hear the sincerity in his voice, understood that he hadn't really regained what he lost. He had discovered something entirely new. It began with an idea. One quiet morning, Blake stood by his office window, watching the city come alive below. Cars moved like veins of light. People rushed to work. And somewhere out there, thousands of young women were being underestimated, just like Emily had been. He remembered her words the night he offered her the job. "You have to promise you'll never see yourself as just anything again." He had promised, and he intended to keep it. So he built something different. Not another business, not another investment, but a foundation. A living, breathing reminder that empathy could change more lives than wealth ever could. It would be called the Dawson Foundation, named not after him, but after the woman who redefined what strength looked like. Its mission: to teach young women coding, cybersecurity, and online safety, helping them find their own voice in a digital world often controlled by men who never listened. When the board first heard his idea, they were skeptical. A charity? From Blake Warren, the same man who once boasted that emotion was bad for business? But he didn't care about approval anymore. For the first time, he was doing something not for praise, not for headlines, but for peace. And there, at the center of it all, was Emily. She had gone from waitress to manager, and now to director of a global foundation. She didn't lead with pride or position. She led with the same quiet humility that had once silenced a room full of arrogance. The first day of the launch, cameras filled the auditorium. Reporters, influencers, and journalists gathered, their microphones ready. Blake stood at the podium, but this time he didn't wear his signature power suit or carry the posture of a king. He stood simply, hands in pockets, voice calm, heart open. He began, "A few months ago, I thought wealth meant having more than others. I thought success was measured in zeros and luxury. But now I know. Wealth is measured by how many lives you lift. Success is when the people you overlooked finally find their wings." He paused, glancing at Emily beside him. She stood in a navy blue dress, shy but confident, the picture of quiet strength. "This foundation," he continued, "exists because of her. She didn't just save my fortune, she saved my conscience." The crowd murmured softly. Cameras clicked. Emily looked down, smiling modestly, her cheeks slightly flushed. She wasn't used to the spotlight, but she didn't need it. Her work spoke for her louder than words ever could. Blake turned to her with genuine respect. "She showed me that genius doesn't always come with a title, and that kindness doesn't need an audience. From this day forward, the Dawson Foundation will make sure no voice, no mind, no dream is dismissed because it comes from someone society labels as small." The applause was thunderous, not the kind that flatters, but the kind that feels earned. For the first time, Blake wasn't performing. He was confessing. Over the following months, the Dawson Foundation became a beacon of opportunity. Hundreds of young women joined workshops, learned to code, built apps, and launched cybersecurity startups of their own. Emily spent her days teaching not just the science of technology, but the art of self-worth. She often told them, "The world will underestimate you, but never underestimate yourself." Blake, meanwhile, kept his distance from the spotlight. He let her lead. He became the silent investor in a movement larger than himself. And in that silence, he found peace. One evening, during an interview, a reporter asked Blake, "Why her? Why give so much power and credit to someone who started as a waitress?" He smiled faintly, eyes glinting with wisdom. "Because she reminded me that leadership isn't about where you start. It's about what you stand for. She stood for humanity when I had forgotten mine. She reminded me that wealth without compassion is poverty in disguise." That quote went viral, but he didn't care for the attention. The real satisfaction came from seeing lives change, seeing Emily's students walk across stages with diplomas and laptops, not trays and aprons. As the months turned into a year, Blake's empire transformed. Meetings felt lighter, workplaces warmer. He implemented employee mentorship programs, mental health days, and scholarships for staff families. The man who once mocked feelings in business now made empathy the cornerstone of his company's brand. But one day, he decided to do something symbolic, something that would bring his story full circle. It was a quiet evening when he walked into the same restaurant where it had all begun, the same place where pride once owned him, where he humiliated a waitress without realizing she would one day save him. The waitstaff didn't recognize him at first. The arrogance was gone. He didn't arrive with bodyguards or cameras, just himself. He ordered coffee, the same kind Emily used to serve. When the young waiter brought it, Blake smiled and said, "You're doing a good job. Don't ever let anyone make you feel small." The waiter nodded, surprised by the kindness. When the bill came, Blake left a tip so generous the staff thought it was a mistake. He stood, adjusting his coat, and smiled. "It's not for the coffee," he said quietly. "It's for the reminder that every person matters." As he stepped out into the cool night air, he glanced back at the restaurant one last time. The laughter inside, the clinking of glasses. It sounded different now. Softer. Real. He walked down the street alone, no longer chasing power or recognition. He was a man reborn, not because he regained what he lost, but because he finally learned what could never be taken. And if you had seen him that night, you wouldn't have recognized the once arrogant billionaire. You would have seen a man at peace with himself, a man who'd traded gold for grace, fear for respect, and isolation for connection. Because in the end, Blake Warren didn't lose his empire. He shed his ego. He didn't fall from greatness. He rose to humanity. And as the lights of the city shimmered against the dark sky, a voice seemed to echo softly across his story. He lost everything money could buy, and found everything it couldn't. So let me ask you this. Would you rather be feared or respected? If this story touched your heart, like, share, and subscribe, because kindness deserves to trend, and the world needs to remember that redemption isn't a weakness. It's the greatest kind of strength there is.